When Barack Obama speaks of the battle for America's future, he is not calling for a clash of armies or a test of might measured by weapons or wealth. Instead, he frames the conflict as a moral and civic struggle, a battle for the soul of America. This metaphor elevates the conversation beyond partisanship, beyond the personalities of politicians, and into the realm of values, ideals, and the collective conscience of the nation. By doing so, the speech takes what might appear as a political rivalry and transforms it into something far more meaningful, a test of what America stands for. At its heart, this battle is not about left versus right, Democrat versus Republican, or even one leader versus another. It is about whether America will remain true to the principles that have guided its greatest moments of progress: hope, truth, and unity. Obama invokes the idea that the true enemies of democracy are not individuals but forces such as fear, cynicism, dishonesty, and division. In this sense, the battlefield is not the political stage, but the hearts and minds of ordinary citizens. Each American must decide whether to succumb to negativity and mistrust or to rise with faith in one another and in the nation's capacity to grow. By emphasizing hope over fear, Obama challenges the audience to see themselves as participants in a forward-looking vision. Fear isolates, paralyzes, and narrows the imagination. Hope empowers, connects, and expands possibilities. In this battle, hope is the weapon that dismantles despair and energizes movements for justice and progress. Obama has long used hope as a central theme, and here it becomes the defining force in the struggle for the nation's future. Equally important is the call to defend truth. In an age when misinformation and manipulation can erode trust in institutions, Obama reminds listeners that truth is not an inconvenience but a compass. Without truth, democracy falters. With it, the people can hold power accountable and shape a shared reality upon which solutions are built. The battle for the soul of America is, in this way, a battle to preserve truth as the foundation of governance and civic life. Finally, Obama places unity at the core of the struggle. He does not deny that America has differences, racial, cultural, economic, and political. But he frames those differences as a source of strength rather than division, provided citizens choose to see each other as partners rather than adversaries. Unity for Obama does not mean uniformity, it means recognizing a common destiny. The future cannot be secured if Americans retreat into tribes or treat neighbors as enemies. Instead, unity demands a deliberate choice to come together, to compromise, and to build bridges where others would dig trenches. Thus, the battle for America's future is not violent, but deeply moral. It is a contest between the forces that diminish democracy and the values that elevate it. Hope, truth, and unity are not abstract ideals. They are the essential tools with which Americans can claim a future worthy of their past sacrifices and their children's dreams. One of Barack Obama's most defining qualities as a communicator is his tone. In Battle for America's Future, the tone is not aggressive, bitter, or divisive. Instead, it is calm, uplifting, inclusive, and motivational. This style is deliberate. It reflects Obama's belief that leadership is not only about presenting ideas, but also about instilling trust, inspiring courage, and empowering people to act together. His tone becomes the vehicle that transforms his message into something that feels not just political, but personal and hopeful. Obama's calmness is one of the most striking elements. In an age of political shouting and constant outrage, he chooses steadiness. This calm demeanor communicates confidence, maturity, and control. It reassures listeners that even in moments of crisis, there is a leader capable of guiding the nation with reason rather than anger. A calm tone also helps his audience focus on the message rather than the emotion of delivery, which can easily cloud meaning when speeches are dominated by hostility. Equally important is the uplifting quality of his speech. Obama consistently frames challenges as opportunities for growth and setbacks as moments to build resilience. Instead of dwelling on what divides or defeats America, he emphasizes what unites and strengthens it. In this way, his rhetoric lifts the audience's gaze from despair toward possibility. Phrases like hope over fear, progress over paralysis, and the future belongs to all of us are quintessentially Obama, short, memorable contrasts that inspire listeners to imagine a brighter horizon. The inclusivity of his tone is another hallmark. Obama speaks to all Americans, not just to those who already agree with him. His language avoids demonizing large groups of people. Instead, he acknowledges differences but emphasizes common bonds, shared values, shared struggles, and a shared destiny. This inclusive approach allows people from diverse backgrounds to see themselves in his vision. It gives them a sense of belonging in the narrative of America's future, which is critical for a country as pluralistic as the United States. The motivational quality of his tone ties these elements together. Obama's speeches often function as a call to action, but rather than commanding or scolding, he motivates by appealing to the audience's highest ideals and deepest sense of responsibility. He frames action, voting, organizing, standing up for justice, not as burdens but as noble contributions to the larger story of America. His tone reminds people that they matter, that their voices count, and that together they can bend history toward progress. Ultimately, Obama's signature tone serves a dual purpose. On the one hand, it builds trust. People feel safe placing their faith in a leader who speaks with steadiness and sincerity. On the other hand, it ignites collective belief. People leave his speeches not only convinced that change is necessary, but also believing they have the power to create it. In Battle for America's Future, this balance of calm assurance and motivating urgency reinforces the idea that America's destiny is not in the hands of a few, but in the hands of all. At the heart of Battle for America's Future lies one of Barack Obama's most enduring rhetorical devices, the deliberate contrast between hope and fear. This juxtaposition is more than a stylistic choice, it is the moral framework through which he asks Americans to evaluate their choices and their future. By consistently presenting hope and fear as opposing forces, Obama not only defines the stakes of the national struggle, but also provides his audience with a clear path forward. Fear, in Obama's framing, is not simply an emotion, it is a political weapon. It is what demagogues rely on to keep people divided, suspicious of one another, and paralyzed from acting boldly. Fear thrives on misinformation, on the suggestion that neighbors are enemies, and on the illusion that the nation's best days are behind it. In this view, fear doesn't just shrink the imagination, it erodes trust in democracy itself. Leaders who trade in fear often do so because fear is easier to sell than hope. It is immediate, visceral, and infectious. But Obama challenges his audience to see fear for what it truly is, a tool of control that limits progress and prevents communities from uniting. Hope, by contrast, is presented as the antidote to fear. For Obama, hope is not naïve optimism or wishful thinking. It is active, grounded, and resilient. Hope is the courage to believe in progress, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. It is the determination to keep pushing forward despite setbacks. In the speech, hope is cast as a unifying force, something that brings Americans together across racial, cultural, and political divides. It is not just an individual mindset, but a collective commitment to keep striving for a better tomorrow. The duality of hope versus fear also mirrors the choice between unity and division. Fear isolates individuals and encourages them to retreat into narrow identities, suspicious of those who are different. Hope, on the other hand, broadens the circle of belonging, affirming that Americans are stronger when they see their struggles and successes as interconnected. Division fractures democracy, unity heals and sustains it. Obama repeatedly suggests that the real strength of America does not lie in homogeneity, but in the ability to remain united despite diversity. Similarly, the speech frames this contrast as progress versus paralysis. Fear stalls progress by convincing people that change is impossible or dangerous. It makes communities cling to the status quo, even when it fails them. Hope propels action. It sparks innovation, fuels movements, and inspires generations to demand better. By making progress synonymous with hope, Obama positions it as both a moral and practical necessity. What makes this rhetorical device so powerful is that it gives the audience a clear moral compass. The battle is not confusing or abstract. It is a choice between two roads. One leads to division, stagnation, and despair. The other leads to unity, action, and possibility. By repeating this contrast throughout the speech, Obama ensures that listeners not only understand the stakes, but also feel emotionally drawn to the side of hope. In the end, hope versus fear is more than a theme. It is the essence of Obama's vision for America. It tells people that even in times of uncertainty, The future is not defined by what frightens them, but by the courage they summon to believe in something better. One of the defining features of Barack Obama's speeches, including Battle for America's Future, is his unshakable faith in people. Unlike leaders who place their trust solely in institutions, policies, or positions of power, Obama consistently reminds audiences that the true strength of America lies in the resilience, compassion, and determination of ordinary citizens. By centering faith in people, he grounds his vision of the future in something both deeply democratic and profoundly human. In the speech, Obama highlights that America's story has never been written by elites alone. It has always been driven by everyday individuals rising to meet extraordinary challenges. He points to young people demanding justice, communities rebuilding after devastation, and neighbors reaching out to one another in times of need. These examples are not incidental. They reinforce his belief that the courage and creativity of ordinary Americans form the bedrock of the nation's progress. For Obama, faith in people is not sentimental. It is a recognition of the lived truth of American history. This emphasis also serves as a counterweight to cynicism. In an era when distrust in institutions is high and politicians are often seen as self-serving, Obama redirects the audience's gaze to themselves and their communities. He argues that the promise of America does not live only in government buildings or legislative chambers, but in schools, neighborhoods, and workplaces across the country. By doing so, he restores a sense of agency to the public. If the people themselves are the source of strength, then they also hold the power to shape the future. Another key element of this faith is resilience. Obama acknowledges the setbacks and struggles America has faced: economic recessions, natural disasters, racial tensions, and political divisions. Yet he insists that these trials reveal not weakness, but endurance. Ordinary Americans, he suggests, have time and again shown the ability to rise after falling, to rebuild stronger after breaking, and to continue striving even when the odds are stacked against them. This resilience is, for him, the defining feature of the American character. Obama's faith in people is also inclusive. He does not limit his admiration to one demographic or group. Instead, he speaks of Americans of every color, creed, and background. This inclusivity sends a clear message. The greatness of the nation does not come from any one segment of society, but from the collective contributions of all its citizens. By acknowledging the struggles and strengths of diverse communities, Obama not only validates their experiences, but also reinforces unity as a shared goal. Finally, this keynote reflects a democratic ideal that sovereignty lies with the people. Obama often reminds listeners that history is not shaped by those who sit on the sidelines, but by those who step into the arena. This belief elevates civic participation from a duty to a powerful expression of faith in one another. When citizens vote, volunteer, or advocate for change, they affirm the principle that the people themselves are the true guardians of democracy. In sum, Obama's faith in people is not rhetorical decoration. It is the cornerstone of his philosophy of leadership. By believing in the resilience and goodness of ordinary Americans, he not only honors the past but also inspires confidence in the future. The battle for America's future, then, is not fought by leaders alone. It is won by the collective courage, decency, and determination of its people. In Battle for America's Future, one of Barack Obama's strongest rhetorical strategies is his call to action. Unlike speeches that merely inspire emotions or paint a vision of the future, Obama's address is grounded in the belief that inspiration must lead to action. He makes it clear that the battle for the nation's future will not be won by speeches, slogans, or symbolic gestures alone. It will be won through the concrete, everyday efforts of citizens who choose to participate in democracy. By voting, organizing, speaking out, and demanding change. At the core of his call to action is the idea that democracy is not a spectator sport. Obama consistently emphasizes that history is not written by those who watch from the sidelines, but by those who step into the arena. This imagery conveys urgency. The challenges America faces cannot be solved by passive observation. Citizens must actively engage if they hope to shape the trajectory of the nation. In this sense, the call to action transforms the audience from listeners into participants, inviting them to see themselves as authors of history. Voting, in particular, is highlighted as a sacred responsibility. Obama often frames the ballot box as the most powerful tool available to ordinary citizens. In his speech, he underscores that progress does not happen without people showing up on election day to make their voices heard. By urging Americans to vote, he connects individual action to collective outcomes, showing how personal responsibility contributes to the nation's future. But voting is only one part of the equation. Obama also stresses the importance of organizing, of communities coming together to advocate for their interests and push for systemic change. From civil rights movements to labor unions to grassroots campaigns, he reminds listeners that organizing has always been at the heart of American progress. Organizing amplifies individual voices, transforming them into a chorus that leaders cannot ignore. Speaking out is another pillar of Obama's call to action. Silence, he warns, allows fear and division to dominate. By encouraging citizens to raise their voices, whether in town halls, classrooms, workplaces, or through peaceful protest, he highlights the power of dialogue and dissent in shaping a healthier democracy. Speaking out is not about noise for its own sake, it is about ensuring that truth and justice remain part of the national conversation. Obama's call to action also emphasizes perseverance. Change is rarely immediate, and victories are often followed by setbacks. He prepares his audience for this reality, urging them not to lose heart when progress seems slow or obstacles seem insurmountable. Instead, he frames perseverance as an essential ingredient in achieving lasting transformation. In doing so, he aligns his message with the long arc of history. Progress may bend slowly, but it bends toward justice when people keep pushing. Ultimately, the call to action and battle for America's future redefines citizenship itself. Being American is not simply about enjoying rights, it is about exercising responsibilities. By voting, organizing, speaking out, and persevering, citizens do more than influence politics, they breathe life into democracy. Obama's call is both practical and moral. The future of America depends not on what leaders promise, but on what people are willing to do together. In Battle for America's Future, Barack Obama places significant emphasis on the principle of collective responsibility. Unlike political narratives that elevate one leader as the sole savior of a nation, Obama reframes the struggle for America's future as something that belongs to everyone. This framing is crucial. It reminds citizens that democracy cannot function if people expect solutions to come only from the top. Instead, progress must be a shared effort, requiring the participation, sacrifice, and vision of the entire nation. Obama's framing reflects a central truth of democracy, that sovereignty lies with the people. Presidents and lawmakers may play important roles, but in the end, the health of the republic depends on whether ordinary Americans take responsibility for it. By highlighting collective responsibility, Obama shifts focus away from the cult of personality that often dominates politics, and toward a broader vision of citizenship in which everyone has a part to play. The speech underscores that responsibility extends beyond elections. Voting is vital, but democracy is sustained in daily choices and actions. It is reflected in how communities care for one another, how citizens stay informed, how they speak up against injustice, and how they hold leaders accountable. Obama reminds listeners that the work of shaping a just and inclusive society cannot be outsourced. It requires constant participation from all. A key element of collective responsibility is shared sacrifice. Obama often acknowledges that progress is not easy and that meaningful change comes with costs. Whether it is the time spent volunteering, the courage to stand against prejudice, or the patience to build consensus in a divided nation. He appeals to the spirit of generations before, who fought wars, endured hardship, and demanded civil rights, not because it was easy, but because they understood their role in carrying the nation forward. In this way, he positions today's citizens as inheritors of a legacy of responsibility. This idea also combats the temptation of apathy. In moments of division and dysfunction, it is easy for citizens to disengage, to believe that their actions do not matter. Obama challenges this cynicism directly, arguing that disengagement itself is a choice that hands power to those who abuse it. By contrast, taking responsibility empowers individuals to shape outcomes. Every small action, from mentoring a child to casting a ballot, contributes to the larger fight for America's soul. Importantly, Obama's call for collective responsibility is inclusive. He does not place the burden on one group alone, but insists that all Americans, regardless of race, class, gender, or ideology, share in the responsibility of building the nation's future. This inclusivity makes the call more powerful. It reminds the audience that responsibility is not reserved for leaders, activists, or experts, but belongs equally to every citizen. In conclusion, Obama's emphasis on collective responsibility transforms his speech from a political statement into a civic lesson. He rejects the notion of a lone hero rescuing the nation and instead uplifts the idea of a people who, together, rise to the occasion. The battle for America's future, then, is not the work of one president or one movement, but the shared task of millions who recognize that democracy survives only when its citizens take responsibility for it. In Battle for America's Future, Barack Obama grounds his vision not only in present challenges, but also in the long arc of American history. He uses historical perspective as a powerful rhetorical tool, reminding listeners that progress has always been achieved by those willing to take risks, endure setbacks, and step into the arena. By situating today's struggles in the broader sweep of the past, Obama provides reassurance that adversity is not unique to this moment, and hope that change is possible when citizens choose courage over complacency. Obama often draws upon the imagery of the arena, echoing Theodore Roosevelt's famous words about the man who dares to strive valiantly, even if he fails. This metaphor highlights the importance of participation. History is not shaped by critics who stand on the sidelines, but by individuals who act, often at great personal cost. In doing so, Obama reframes civic engagement as part of a noble tradition, one that links ordinary citizens of today with generations of Americans who shaped the nation through activism, sacrifice, and perseverance. By invoking historical perspective, Obama also connects current struggles to past movements for justice and equality. He frequently recalls the sacrifices of civil rights leaders, labor organizers, suffragists, and others who fought for inclusion and fairness. These reminders serve two purposes. First, they demonstrate that progress has never been inevitable. It has always required people to challenge the status quo. Second, they inspire contemporary audiences by showing that transformative change is possible, even when the odds seem overwhelming. Obama's use of history is not limited to celebrating victories. He also acknowledges the darker chapters of America's past: slavery, segregation, discrimination, and political corruption. But rather than using these as reasons for despair, he frames them as evidence of resilience. The nation's ability to confront and overcome injustice becomes part of its identity. This perspective encourages Americans to see present divisions and crises not as fatal flaws, but as challenges that, like those before, can be met with determination and courage. Another aspect of this keynote is the way Obama blends history with personal stories. He often references his own journey, the son of a Kenyan father and a Kansas mother, who rose to the presidency, as an embodiment of the American promise. His personal narrative connects with the larger national story, reinforcing the idea that America's history is one of expanding opportunity and inclusion. By placing himself within this historical continuum, Obama underscores that progress is not abstract, it is lived and real. Finally, historical perspective provides a moral compass. By reminding Americans of past struggles and victories, Obama encourages his audience to measure their choices against the values that guided earlier generations' courage, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of justice. The message is clear: if past Americans could endure greater challenges and still expand freedom, then today's citizens have no excuse to give in to apathy or fear. In sum, the historical perspective in Obama's speech functions as both a grounding force and a source of inspiration. It reassures listeners that they are not alone in their struggles, and it challenges them to live up to the legacy of those who came before. Progress, he insists, is not automatic. It is won by those willing to step into the arena and fight for the soul of America. In Battle for America's Future, Barack Obama concludes with a tone that is both resolute and deeply optimistic. After walking his audience through the challenges of fear, division, and the urgent need for collective responsibility, he closes by lifting their gaze to a hopeful vision of what lies ahead. This optimism is not shallow cheerfulness. It is grounded in history resilience and a belief in the enduring strength of the American people. By ending on such a hopeful note, Obama ensures that his message does not leave listeners burdened with anxiety, but inspired to act with confidence and courage. Obama's optimism is carefully constructed. First, he acknowledges the difficulties America faces. He does not pretend that challenges are trivial or that divisions will disappear overnight. Instead, he validates the audience's struggles, economic inequality, political dysfunction, climate threats, and cultural rifts, before pivoting to the possibility of overcoming them. This balance makes his optimism credible. It avoids sounding naive because it is rooted in the reality of hardship, yet it insists that hardship does not define the nation's destiny. Central to his optimistic conclusion is the conviction that the future belongs to the people, not the powerful few. This democratization of hope shifts the focus away from elites and institutions and toward ordinary citizens. He frames the people themselves as the guardians of America's future, emphasizing that their courage, decency, and unity will determine whether the country rises or falls. By doing so, he empowers his audience to leave the speech believing that their actions matter and that together they are capable of shaping history. Unity is another pillar of Obama's hopeful vision. In contrast to rhetoric that thrives on division, his conclusion insists that Americans, despite differences, share a common destiny. His optimism stems from the idea that when citizens come together, their combined energy can overcome any obstacle. He describes the future not as the property of one group, party, or ideology, but as something to be built collectively. This inclusive vision ensures that every listener feels part of the larger mission, regardless of background or belief. Hope, in Obama's conclusion, is also tied to continuity, the belief that America's story has always been one of renewal. He often reminds audiences that the nation has survived wars, depressions, injustices, and deep divisions, yet has always emerged stronger. This historical grounding reassures listeners that the present moment, though difficult, is not unprecedented. America has risen before, and it can rise again. By placing today's struggles within this long arc of progress, Obama frames the future as a continuation of a narrative that bends toward justice and opportunity. Finally, his optimistic conclusion is not passive. It is a call to claim the future. He insists that optimism must be matched with action. The hopeful vision he paints is not guaranteed. It depends on the choices Americans make and the responsibilities they embrace. But by ending with words of faith in the people, he leaves his audience energized rather than exhausted, ready to step into the arena with renewed determination. In sum, Obama's optimistic conclusion transforms the speech into more than a warning about threats or a lecture on responsibility. It becomes a rallying cry rooted in belief that America's best days are still ahead, that the people have the power to shape them, and that united, they can secure a future worthy of their ideals.